Well, indeed, that was the situation last week, and a number of people thought that by this week, in fact, the authorities too thought that by this week, in fact, today was supposed to be the day when the kickoff of administering the Moderna vaccine was supposed to start after what was supposed to have been routine checks, it was seen by NAFDAC. But it looks like it's more than just routine, because we found out that the federal government eventually postponed the exercise owing to unforeseen circumstances. Well, joining us now to shed a little more light on what could be the results of the unforeseen circumstances, when we know also that those vaccines also have a very limited shelf life. We have joining us right now Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, who is the Director General of the National Agency for Food, Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC. Madam, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning. Well, I could barely hear you. I'm hoping that when next I throw the next question, you will be able to. I will be able to hear you sufficiently. But ma'am, do tell us, initially we thought this was going to be just some routine checks on the part of NAFDAC, because we understand that the administration of the Moderna vaccines is supposed to kick off today, but that is now not the case. What exactly is the issue with the vaccines? Did NAFDAC find anything wrong?
Actually, no, NAFDAC did not find anything wrong with the quality of the vaccine. We tested the vaccine and it was okay, good for use, safe for use. However, NAFDAC does what is called track and trace of all COVID vaccine distributed throughout the country. And unfortunately, the packaging doesn't have the full information for that tracking and tracing. Therefore, we have to improvise, meaning we have to get labels affixed to the boxes so that we can track and trace the distribution of the vaccines across the country. We did that for Covishield, or the AstraZeneca that came from India. Because the information was already there on the packaging. It has nothing to do with the quality. It is just on the packaging. And why is that barcoding? Let me just break it down. Barcoding is so important. It is important to make sure that the vaccine that is taken to any part of the country is the same vaccine that left Abuja. And NAFDAC is the only country in Africa that is using this technology. It is called GS1 driven technology to follow up the vaccine wherever they go in the country. So we are doing that as we speak, and by the end of the week that should be completed. Thank you.
That's definitely good to know. I mean, that there's nothing wrong with the quality of the vaccines. But then there were questions as to where, because we also read in a few of the dailies, we also took the story yesterday, that there was incomplete documentation. Was that what they meant by incomplete documentation which accompanied the vaccines?
There was some missing documents in terms of the shipping. Documentation which we got the same day that we were supposed to get them just a little later. So that had nothing to do with the delay. The delay again is due to this labeling, that extra labeling that we need to put on the secondary packaging. But the documentation is fine now. There was nothing wrong with the Moderna vaccine. The expiration is 6 months, and I'm sure by the end of October, November, we'll probably exhaust the whole vaccine. So we're going to be in a good shape as a country.
Okay. What about talk that this was not produced in facilities approved by the World Health Organization? I don't know if you're able to, is it possible that some vaccines are not produced where the WHO has approved?
No, the vaccines were produced in facilities approved by World Health Organization. That was why they gave it emergency use listing category. What happens with vaccines right now is, or manufacturing, is that sometimes you have 2 or 3 different sites for production of the vaccines. But even in this case, it is only one site in the US where this came from, so there is no issue with the manufacturing site. That manufacturing site was approved by the WHO emergency use listing mechanism.
Well, I think it is, for a number of Nigerians, it is very reassuring because a number of people just thought, okay, NAFDAC was going to test the vaccines. Hey, this is 4 million vaccines which have already arrived the country. Will NAFDAC say, no, we cannot use the vaccines? But it's turned out that NAFDAC certification is indeed very important. Can you speak to the role of NAFDAC certification in, even in situations like this where we have received you know, vaccines which we had long been expecting?
Thank you very much. NAFDAC started this preparation for vaccine arrival since last year. The agency is the first country in Africa to write the guidance, the preparedness guidance. So we take this very seriously because our goal is to safeguard the health of our people. So once the vaccine dossier is made available, we look at the document very, very carefully, and we use 3 mechanisms actually. We use reliance, meaning a stringent regulatory country like US, UK, they've already approved that vaccine. We take the assessment report, but we take it with a grain of salt, to say, and make sure that anything that is peculiar to our own population or that may be peculiar to our own population, we note very well, irrespective of the approval that they've already given. That is one mechanism. And also another mechanism is through WHO emergency use listing. WHO takes time to examine the dossier and whatnot. But even that, we take time to look at what they have approved, because the population that was used in testing may be different from ours. The way everybody responds to medicines is different, so we cannot just take what anybody has approved outside the country just like that. So we do due diligence. We have about 6 directorates that come together, meaning multidisciplinary group. They come together and look line by line through the dossier to make sure that we note what is there or the peculiarities. Because as soon as the vaccine arrives, we have to test it in the lab. We've got to test it in the lab to ensure that what is on the WHO, EUL, or what other regulatory agency has approved is the same thing that we are getting. So we do the testing and then we do the release. That is when it can be used, in the vaccination program. So we do a lot as a regulatory agency. Then after the vaccine is being given to people, we have to do safety monitoring to ensure that similar side effects that were reported in the dossier are what we are getting, or if it is different, because we are different population, to note such side effects. Because about every 2 weeks, regulatory agencies across the world come together and share any side effect that may be peculiar to one vaccine versus the other rather, so that we will note that this emergency use authorization can lead to full approval in the future. And that means that we have already noted all the clinical outcomes that mightn't have been noted during the development, that we've noted it and we have documented it and put it, sent it to a central database. So it is extremely important what NAFDAC does or what any regulatory agency does across the world regarding the vaccines or any other commodity.
So it's not just routine. This is not just a question of, well, they have come. It's not ceremony. There is actually a serious procedure going on behind the scenes to ensure that whatever comes into the country is fit for the Nigerian population.
Exactly. It is something that is a 24/7. Once the vaccine dossier comes, it is 24/7 work for 15 days for the vaccine committee. And after that, they write their reports, they give it to me, then I will look and make sure that everything is fine, edit whatever needs to be edited, come together with the vaccine committee or members of the vaccine committee to discuss whatever we need to clarify before sending it to the minister. It is a very arduous and serious task on our part, first because we cannot play with vaccines. And our people, we cannot play with any commodity. Actually, I take that personally because drugs can make and unmake. And our job as a regulatory agency is to ensure that what that medicine is developed for is what the patient gets. So it's a very serious business.
I think that's very reassuring, but let's just get this very clear. So assuming for whatever reason you found that these vaccines were not suitable for our population, do you think that it would be too political or politically incorrect for you to say, no, we're sorry, as an agency, we cannot approve this for the use of the Nigerian people? Would you? I don't know if you could ever picture such a scenario.
Yes, I can picture that type of scenario. Our goal is to make sure that what is going into the public space for use by our people is of quality, it is safe. If it is not of quality, if it is not safe, we will reject it. We will reject it because I cannot sleep in the night and think that the vaccine that we have approved or any drug commodity that we have approved is going to affect patients adversely or the public adversely. So I can easily do that. I've taught manufacturing. I taught manufacturing for about 20 years in the US. My job is to ensure that there is quality in any product. That was what I did for 30 years. So I don't lose any sleep about it in terms of, oh, this is not good or this is good, let's go. I don't lose sleep at all because it is my profession. It is what I've taught students from across the world, and it is a product that my own people will use. So whichever way you look at it, it is a very serious business for me. Thank you very much.
It's very reassuring, Professor Adeyeye, but I'm going to have to send this to my colleague now, Ayo.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, Prof, one of the issues that's still bothering the entire health community in the world, and I'm sure you must have considered it as well, is what the chief executive of BioNTech, who made the Pfizer vaccine, talked about when he said it's quite possible that in the next 6 to 12 months, further variants will emerge and would require adaptation of the vaccine, meaning that another variant of this same COVID-19 could come that, you know, the first generation vaccines that we have will not be effective against them, and that would call for some modification of the vaccine. It raises just one question in my mind, Professor, and that is local production of vaccines. Should we find ourselves in that situation, it definitely will be an issue. The first time we had 4 million doses of the vaccine, and now another 4 million, and you know the number of people that we are dealing with in our country, Prof. So what's any hopes, any steps, any progress made in getting that locally made vaccine that you talked about? previously?
Yes, there is a lot. Thank you very much again. There is a lot of progress. I'm passionately drawn to local content because COVID-19 pandemic has taught us a lesson that you cannot be too over-dependent on other countries. Because at the beginning of this pandemic, many health commodities couldn't leave India. India government banned them from being exported, and Nigeria was left hanging. The same thing from China. China was fighting COVID. We couldn't get anything from China. So in terms of
Oh, wow. I'm pretty sure that we will get the Prof back really soon, because that is a critical thing. Mark, you would recall that there have been times, every time we have had reason to talk with Prof on this matter, her own issue has always been, first of all, what are the things that we can do from within ourselves? So, Prof, please continue. We lost your communication for a bit.
Yes, so the local content is being discussed as we speak concerning COVID vaccine. I'm the chair of the COVID vaccine task force that the minister, the honorable minister, put together. We are working feverishly, assiduously, to ensure that we're going to have local manufacturing of vaccine. The government has a partnership, public-private partnership, with a company, BioVaccine. The government has 49 stake in that company. And that company actually was set up originally to manufacture routine vaccines. But now they put a COVID-19 vaccine in their template. So that's we are already working on. And I believe that within the next 6 months to 1 year, a lot of work will have been, or will be happening on the ground. And we also have eminent Nigerians across the world heading different agencies that are supporting us on this. We're going to make sure that we have local content or local manufacturing. In terms of local manufacturing, it is also hand in hand with what NAFDAC does. Because WHO wants to be sure that any country that is going to manufacture vaccine has a strong regulatory agency. And what NAFDAC has been going through for 3.5 years is to make sure that that is going to happen. And it is almost happening because there's what is called the maturity level 3, which we are almost at the point of getting. We got our audit about a month ago, and it was very successful, but they will be coming again in few months to really declare our maturity level. So it is not just having a local manufacturing, it's also having a very strong regulatory agency, so that whether it is inspection or whether it is actually the building, the building has to be such that it has good manufacturing practice outlet. Without the building standards, it cannot even happen. So now that building itself to the approval of the facility and then the product. So it's, we're going to have it by the grace of God. We're going to have local manufacturing very soon.
It'll be gratifying to know, Prof, how soon that will be. Plus, is funding going to be an issue? We've always had talks about that one. Is funding going to be an issue?
I don't think so. The federal government has committed money towards this venture, this initiative of local manufacturing, especially with this BioVaccine company that has a 49% government investment in it. So there will not be any issue in terms of funding. Aside from the money that the federal government is going to provide, there are international partners that will also contribute towards it. So I believe it's going to be a success.
I asked that against the backdrop of the fact that many researchers, especially in health in our country, say that funding has always been an issue for them.
Yes, funding has always been an issue, but for this government, Buhari government, COVID-19 pandemic woken everybody up in terms of the neglect in the health sector for decades. The health sector was neglected for decades. Therefore, the government realized this and started putting money towards the different health sectors. For example, this time last year, I was brokering between CBN and pharmaceutical manufacturers in Nigeria in terms of giving them intervention funding for infrastructure development. And it is so gratifying now to see many local pharmaceutical companies redesigning, rebuilding their facilities from this low interest rate, low interest rate loan that has been given. So the government is really supporting health sector now, and thank God for COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, low interest rate is not a medical term, so I can understand you looking for the right words. But, you know, I mean, when you talk about the funding, Prof, I'm sorry to have to ask you this, but it begs the question of if government is indeed funding the health sector as well, one wonders why it's so difficult to carry along the people who are working in the sector, like the NARD.
It's unfortunate that it is easier to break something down than to build it up. This is a result of decades of neglect. Whether it is infrastructure, whether it is manpower, a lot of neglect has happened over the years. And we are just reaping the dividends of neglect, of decay for over 30 years. I left this country about 38, well, it's going to 40 years ago now, and it wasn't this way. But we neglected everything. We depended